Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views covering the topics we hope are relevant to you. Well, today we cover an attack on a British Gurdwara. The police are shockingly cleared of the killing of a farmer shot in the head during this year's farmers' protests, and the brother of Amritpal Singh is arrested. We also report on those Indians roped into the front line in Ukraine and Saver breaking records in Canada. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. I hope you're hanging in there and doing well today. And again, welcome to all the amazing viewers. Thanks for all your comments. Keep them coming in because we love reading them.
Indeed, and together we'll be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll take a look at some of those great comments which have been filling up below our videos. Thanks so much for those as always. So to kick us off today, James, what have you got to get us going?
Well, let's start off here with the Indians that are supposed to be getting released from the Russian military. Now, what's happening is essentially this is human trafficking, and several people have been arrested not only in India but also Nepal and several other countries. There's different news stations around the world who are reporting on this, and I'm going to jump between two articles just to show you the difference in terms of the reporting on it. And essentially, you've got the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, which is on the screen now. And you can see this little romantic walk that Putin and Modi are having. It almost looks like they should be holding hands here. But essentially what has happened is that in the meeting that they held as Modi visited Russia, they have discussed and agreed to release any of the Indians who are fighting in Ukraine or on behalf of the Russian military. Essentially what has happened is that there have been people going into countries such as Nepal and India where they do not have any regulations that prohibit their citizens from fighting for a foreign military. Now, with that said, the individuals are promised money, approximately $2,000 a month, plus they're also issued Russian passports and citizenship on a fast-track program. Now, how many people have actually gotten these benefits, we don't know. We do know that many of them have been brought over to Russia and forced to sign contracts that they couldn't read. The contracts were in Russian language, and essentially they were agreeing to fight for the Russians by going into Ukraine and being placed on the front lines. This is not what they had been promised. They were supposed to be in supportive roles within Russia for the military, but not fighting on the front lines. Now, with this bait and switch is essentially what it is. They're promised one thing and then another thing happens. This, if it was anyone else, would be considered human trafficking. And as I said, there have been several agents within several countries that have been arrested and charged with human trafficking. However, in a human trafficking ring, they usually don't just go after the people who are recruiting or bringing in the victims. They also go after the head of the snake. And in this case, that would be Putin and his government. By proxy, they are all responsible. They know what's going on. They know that these people are being duped. They know that they are not trained for military action. They're getting 15 days training and then sent to the front line for people who have never been in combat or in military training at this level. It's just absurd. There have been approximately 10 Indian citizens who have been killed. There are others who have been injured, and there's still approximately 50, I believe, that are still registered and fighting there. However, this number for Napoleons and others are actually way up in the thousands, and some estimate over 10,000 foreign fighters that are representing the Russian military in Ukraine. So this is an international situation that needs to get more attention. With India trying to increase trade by over 50% back and forth with Russia, they have a bit of leverage there. However, these other countries don't have the same leverage to be able to negotiate the early release from the military contracts that their citizens have signed. So it definitely needs to get more attention, and there needs to be more demand by the international community to get these people home. They didn't know what they were signing up for. They were tricked into it. And this, again, is human trafficking at its worst. Back to you, Angus. What do you think on that one? And before I close off there, I will invite you, if you're looking for other information, there is a really good article on the cbc.ca, that's the Canadian Broadcasting Corp, that goes into a lot more detail about this situation than a lot of the other foreign press. So just if you want to get more detail on it, I encourage you to read up and, write to your politicians.
Yeah, this isn't it. A slightly weird story, and I really struggle with the logic of all this, because the Ukraine war, the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia, Russia has enormous armed forces. It has enormous military resources at its disposal. And Indians who are essentially fleeing the poverty that they live in parts of India are desperate. These people are desperate. So you see Indians all around the world, basically, who are economic migrants looking for essentially a way to survive economically. So hence the Middle East is full of Indian construction workers, for example. But these poor Indians who've been sucked into this Ukrainian war, logically, it baffles me, because there've always been, in any conflict, almost throughout history, there have always been some form of mercenaries involved, as in there are always those who join in the conflict, whether ideologically or financially. They join either side for whatever reasons motivate them. But this is essentially, James, as you say, it's human trafficking. It's taking advantage of these vulnerable Indians who are desperate. They really are some of life's victims. And they've been sucked into this war. The bit I don't understand is if you're a mercenary, you're motivated to fight in that war for whatever reason drives you. But if you're an Indian, essentially an Indian labourer who's been promised a behind-the-lines role, whether it's catering or logistics or whatever, so you then conscript them effectively into the front line. As you said, James, you're handing them a rifle and say, right, get on with it, good luck. Now, what are you achieving by that? And if you look at it from just a simple military perspective, it's false economy. If you're running an army in a war, if you're sending soldiers in to fight who are untrained, ill-equipped, and have clearly no motivation to be in that position, how effective are those soldiers going to be on the front line? The answer is completely ineffective, particularly if you are the aggressor, which Russia is in this situation. So yeah, James, I am baffled by the logic of this, particularly from the Russian side. Why on earth would you do this? It's not, you're filling places on the front line, but with soldiers, they're not even soldiers, but with people who firstly don't want to be there, and secondly have no right to be there, and thirdly are completely ineffective in that role anyway. So what is the point? So yeah, James, I am baffled by this, and I do hope for those poor Indians' sake that there is enough pressure on Putin that because I can't believe Putin would support this concept anyway. He's got enough people in Russia. The population of Russia is vast. If he needs to conscript people, he will conscript people. He doesn't need Indians, these vulnerable Indians from India. So yeah, I'm baffled by it, to be perfectly honest, James.
Yeah, and I mean, Russia's lost hundreds of thousands of troops since this war began in Ukraine. And, these are well-trained troops for the most part. There are a lot of Russians that are not well-trained that were just thrown on the front line, just like the foreign fighters. But, I mean, what do they expect? They're basically looking at it as these lives have no value, and it's just disgusting what they're doing.
Yeah. As I say, it's a bit of a strange one. Let's hope those poor Indians are finally released from that war zone. So, okay, James, Amritpal Singh, I gather something's been happening with his brother.
Yes, his brother Happy is not so happy today. He has been arrested for possession and use of a methamphetamine, and what they're looking at here is ice. And right now, I'm just showing a picture of him on the screen. Now, interestingly enough, he was going to a rally and a protest in support of several people who have been imprisoned by India. And suspiciously, he was stopped in a parked car with several others doing ice. Now, we can look at this two ways. His brother is a very staunch advocate for drug avoidance, abstinence, and treatments. So this is another reason why he needs to be let out of prison and to be able to represent the people that voted for him, because he wants to deal with the drug issues that are plaguing the Punjab region. Now, his brother, it may be just a false charge. It could be just set up that they're imprisoned for 15 days. But it could be also that he does have a pendants for using drugs. And in that case, I mean, his brother needs to be there to support him and hopefully get him some treatment. His parents, again, claim, if you go down this article here, and this one here states that they were not only accused and charged, but that they did do a drug test and it came up positive. That again was entered into the evidence that was brought up with the charges under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. And this again, we don't know if this is actually a real situation or if it was something set up in order to allow the police to block them from taking part in the protests. And again, it would not surprise me for that to happen. But again, if he does have a substance abuse issue, it just goes to the real evidence that it doesn't matter how impressive your family is, how much power they have or lack of power, where you sit in the social standings and economic standings, the drug problem is hitting all areas, all communities, all families. And this is another reason that Amritpal needs to be let out so that he can help Punjab through this terrible epidemic that's striking the world. It's not just in Punjab, it's a worldwide issue and it needs all kinds of creative solutions. And for that, I say he was voted in with a lead of almost 200,000 votes over the next person in line. So obviously the people have spoken. They want Amritpal to be there to represent them, to bring in the policies and to make the change that he promised in the election. It's time to move forward. It's time for India to realize that they can't keep him in prison and they can't just allow him to sit there and not have any representative helping the state of Punjab. And it's got to end. So this is a really interesting story that I'll keep an eye on and we'll keep updates as they come in. Now, his father, of course, is stating that it was a setup, that he is being framed, and that, again, it was just another way to attack Amritpal and the family, to decredit them and to bring the family to their knees. And I tell you, I've seen the way that they're fighting and the way that they're trying to keep going. And I don't think that the India government will ever bring that family to their knees. I think they're too strong for that. I think that Modi and his government need to recognize that and work with him instead of against him. And that's my take on this, Angus. And as I said, it just seems very convenient that they also know exactly who dealt the drugs and sold it to them, how they paid for them. They say that they got it from Amritpal's brother and the co-accused. I just call BS on it. I don't believe a word I'm reading here. I think it was just way too convenient. And that's my take on it anyway, Angus.
Yeah, my first reaction to this, I suppose the initial reaction when you see this story, and I guess it's the same reaction that many Indians will have when they see this. I think, oh God, you idiot, fool, what were you doing? Especially with such a high-profile anti-drug campaigning brother. But then, as you say, James, you have to take a step back from this because, the initial reaction is to believe what you read. Most people tend to believe what they read. Yeah, this guy has been arrested for drug dealing. Yeah. It must be true. But, as you say, let's look at this in context of everything that is happening to his family. Amritpal, he's residing in jail. We know Amritpal is a huge threat to the Indian administration. They've retained him in jail, they've detained him in jail for over a year now without charge because they are they are terrified of what Amritpal Singh could potentially do within the Punjab. So if they can't, now they've contained Amritpal Singh, but potentially they may have no choice but to release him eventually. So what else can they do? They can attack his family. So then, of course, his brother, and how ironic to then charge his brother with drugs charges. One of the key foundations of Amritpal's popularity is not just Khalistan, but it is his anti-drug stance. So yeah, how appropriate to then charge his brother with under drugs charges. So, it's a difficult one to call, really, because we obviously are not party to any of the evidence. All we have is literally just a press report to base our opinions on. But, as I say, if you take a step back and you look at the context of everything happening, it does raise a huge amount of suspicion. Really, and let's be fair here, we do know that the Indian state has sunk to the worst possible depths to enact their agenda. They have murdered innocent Sikhs in the Punjab over decades. We know of these extrajudicial killings, so we know what they are capable of. So what's a simple fake drugs charge? It's something very easy for them to do and create and concoct. So it's certainly possible that this is a completely trumped up charge against Harpreet. But I keep an open mind, James. It's let's follow this story. Let's see what does happen. But as the family says, the family are proclaiming his innocence. To me, let's see what happens over time. But I know where my sympathies lie, and I know where my suspicions lie, James. And I guess most of our audience probably feel the same. But in terms of balance, for all we know, he may have been using drugs. People do. Even the best people that we know sometimes fall victim to the evil of drugs. Drugs are so evil. They can literally affect any family. And you will get families where, very respectable families, and one member of that family is just for whatever reason is vulnerable enough to start taking drugs. That's the evil of drugs. And this is why Amritpal Singh is so passionate in what he campaigns for, because he understands how dangerous these drugs are. The youth, particularly the young generation, are so vulnerable to drugs, and they are so insidious as a mechanism to undermine a society, which is why they're being poured into the Punjab. So it's not impossible that he was using drugs. As I say that for the purpose of balance. So let's wait and see. Let's see if any more evidence emerges. And if he is brought to trial, well, again, let's see. Let's see if any evidence is presented. But I say, certainly from our reporting, it's very clear that we have little faith in the Indian justice system, the Indian legal system, as his brother rotting in jail, I think evidences, James.
Yeah, and as we said, it can touch anybody. I've seen it destroy communities here in Canada. I've seen it touch people that I'm related to or that I've known in the past, and some of them made it through, some of them are not here today. So I hope that if he is using any of these drugs, especially the methamphetamine, is such a highly addictive and destructive drug, I just send his family the best of my wishes, and for him to find a way forward, to get clean and get away from that if he is indeed using. So my thoughts are with the whole family regardless.
Indeed, but James will follow that story up as and when more evidence emerges. Okay, let's move on to my first story. And we've had a shocking attack here in the UK on a Gurdwara, a very large Gurdwara in Gravesend. This is in the southeast of England, just outside London. And it's even reached the mainstream media, this attack. And it was a fairly low-level attack, but it was a teenager armed with a blade, and details are short at this stage. We're still trying to find out exactly what did happen. But basically, some youngster, a teenager, a 17-year-old, ran into a Gurdwara and started attacking people. We've seen different reports. It was either a knife, it was a machete, it was a sword. We don't know yet. We are waiting for further confirmations. But there have been official press releases and official statements, particularly one from the Gurdwara itself. And I'll just go through this just to fill in the details, so people are aware of what actually happened. And it happened at the Guru Nanak Darbar Gurdwara in Gravesend, and their management committee released a statement talking about this man carrying out a random attack on the Sangat. And the statement said that a person has been arrested by Kent police on a suspicion of attempted murder after entering the Gurdwara and creating an incident in one of the Darbar halls, that's the court or prayer room. We can confirm that the incident happened after Sukhasan, that's the practice of putting Guru Granth Sahib Ji to rest for the evening, but the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, that's their scriptures, were not present in the Darbar hall at the time. The Gurdwara is cooperating with the police, who are treating the incident very seriously, of course, which is great. The district commander on site is investigating. His investigations are ongoing. So the person was spotted by the Gurdwara security team. The police were called immediately. The Gurdwara will update the Sangat over the next few days as more information comes out. Now, the Kent police themselves have said that they were called to the Gurdwara at 8:10 p.m. on Thursday evening to a report of a disturbance in Gravesend, and it was reported that 2 people had sustained injuries that were not considered to be life-threatening and are being treated locally. A 17-year-old male was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. They're not looking for anyone else in connection with the incident, but remain on scene for further inquiries. And the incident has prompted global reaction from Sikh communities, especially amidst ongoing concerns of attacks on Guru Granth Sahib Ji in India, as well as hate crimes that are rising the world over. What we don't know, and I've been trying very hard to try and find more information about the young person, the instigator of this attack. There's no clue as to what his ethnicity or his background is. I think we can all probably guess. But the point is, he's a young, impressionable boy who's run into a Gurdwara armed with a blade of some description, clearly intent on hurting people and killing people, and he very, very nearly came close to it. Unfortunately, we don't know who this person was yet, and of course British law means anybody under the age of 18, any details are always withheld because they are seen as a minor, so we don't know actually if any details of who it was and their ethnicity and their background, their religious background, will be revealed. So, excuse me, but what it has highlighted is how vulnerable the Sikh community are to these sorts of attacks. And it's more evidence of this divisive agenda that has been propagated out of India by the Hindutva people. They're driving these divisions amongst the communities, and they are driving the Hindu community to attack other communities, particularly the Muslim and Christian, and indeed here the Sikh communities. And this is just yet another incident in that ongoing divisive agenda, which is terrifying for the community. It's very, very concerning. There have been reactions across the community about this, and one of the largest communities here in the UK is in an area called Southall. And one of their organisations have released. They've made their own press release, and they said due to concerns about criminal activity around the Sri Guru Singh Sabha Southall. So this is the Gurdwara in Southall, again one of the largest in the UK. Last week, a community initiative saw Amrit Vela, that's their dawn prayer meditation, patrols start. So they're actually having to send out their own patrols, security patrols around the Gurdwara and the locality, just in case, to protect their community. And following that attack, another organisation, Chardi Kala UK, are calling for all Sikhs to get proactive in protecting their faith. And they have released their own statement. And I won't read this out in full, but it's a very, very robust statement. It's very forthright, and it makes no bones about its intentions. But what it has said at the end is its call to action. And what it has done is it's asking for the communities all around the UK to unite as what it calls as #OnePanth. Every Sikh that has pyar and dard for the Guru and Panth should start forming small missals of like-minded individuals. Now, missals, if I recall, this word dates back to the Sikh Empire, and in fact before the Sikh Empire. Missals, if I recall correctly, and I know our audience will correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that a missal are these small armies, almost like militia, that were formed in the days of the pre-empire days in the Punjab region, and Afghanistan and what is now today's Pakistan regions. So all these Sikh tribes in those days would form these missals, these militia, to protect obviously their own region, their own locality. And over time, those missals then coagulated. They joined forces into eventually what became the Sikh Empire. So there's an interesting use of this word missal. So this organisation has asked for all the regional missals of like-minded individuals to form together, and especially in areas with a significant Sikh demographic and Gurdwara. And then for those missals to start working together to re-establish the systems, structures and processes that Maharaj bestowed upon us, and to implement proactive ways to propagate and increase Sikhi in your areas, while pushing those that mean us harm far away from the house of the Guru. So, and I'll keep this on screen for those who want to read it. It's quite an interesting press release, but it does call upon all the various factions within the Sikh community to pull together now. That the community is under attack from these hostile parties that have been whipped up by Hindutva, and in the absence of British protection, British government protection, they have to protect themselves. And we've talked about this a lot, James, about what is the British government doing to protect the community. It is taking steps. Law enforcement locally on the ground have actually been, I would say, reasonably effective, but it's higher up. It's when it starts getting political, when you start looking at the higher tiers of policing and law enforcement. And then, of course, the government. Are they actually putting policies in place? Are they putting resources in place to protect the communities? That's really what is at question here. And it's terrible that the community itself has to start sending out its own, I was going to say militia, that's too militant a word, but certainly its own community groups to protect their own Gurdwaras, their own property, and of course their own people. So, and then finally, Sky News, Amrit Singh Man, he's become a very high profile reporter for Sky News. He is a Sikh. And he reported on the fantastic 25,000 strong protests, certainly gatherings in Trafalgar Square in London a few weeks ago to commemorate 1984. And Amrit Singh Man was on mainstream Sky News reporting on that, asking all the right questions, bringing up all the right issues that genuinely affect the Sikh community. He, again, on mainstream TV. And he also has posted up on his X or Twitter feed. Just last month, Jagjit Singh, a volunteer at Gravesend Gurdwara, this is the Gurdwara that was attacked, told Sky News he wants the UK government to tackle anti-Sikh hate. And yesterday, Jagjit was tackling down an attacker armed with a sword, this is where he refers to a sword, in one of the prayer rooms at Gravesend Gurdwara. 2 worshippers were stabbed. So Amrit Singh Man has also highlighted, again on mainstream media, about this attack. But he's highlighted the fact that this one guy, Jagjit Singh, who works at the Gurdwara, and he only a few weeks ago he was saying we need protection against this anti-Sikh agenda, and where is it? And the same guy, only a few weeks later, is having to literally himself pull down a young lad with a sword who was attacking his congregation. So it's scary, James. I mean, everybody in the West has the right to worship and to speak in public without fear of being attacked. It's so anti-democratic, and it's very symptomatic of what is happening with India. That India, I have no doubt, is behind this. The root cause of a lot of this community division is stemming from India. They are driving just normal Hindu people, even a young impressionable lad, into attacking people of another faith. It's shocking, isn't it?
It is, and I think that we as adults and parents, community, members and such have a responsibility to do a better job at educating today's youth about tolerance, acceptance, and about the top, maybe even the top 10 principles of each faith group, so that you understand what they are about and that they're not something to be feared, but something to be welcomed as a positive in our communities. The multiculturalism, the interfaith. I mean, it's what makes Canada great. It's what makes the UK great. It's what makes the whole world great when everybody can understand, have tolerance, patience, and live in peace. And that's something that we're missing. I mean, even with this hate mongering that's going on in the West is just insane. I mean, a 20-year-old that takes a shot at former President Trump yesterday. I mean, it's going off the rails, and we really need to step back and see how we can, as adults, start bringing back a bit of respect to the younger community when it comes to different religions, backgrounds, and, all of that.
Yeah, and I think what's particularly evil about this incident at this Gurdwara in Kent is a Gurdwara, like a church, like a temple, is a place where anybody should feel at their safest. It is a place where families gather, and there were families and children gathered at this Gurdwara. So of all places, anywhere in the world, apart from outside your own home, the one place that every human being should feel safe is in their place of worship, in whatever religion that you practice. And there were families here in this Gurdwara, again, who should be feeling completely protected and safe. And in comes a young lad armed with a sword. I mean, again, it just points to something really evil running through society that must be stamped out. And it just flies in the face of everything that Sikhi stands for as well. So yeah, it is. It's as you say, James. The young are very impressionable, and they are the most vulnerable to these sorts of dangerous agenda. And it's again, the root cause is bad enough that it was the young lad, but it's who has indoctrinated this boy. Who are the people who have put into this young boy's mind these sorts of feelings of hatred, deep hatred that would drive him to try and kill innocent people? It's very sad. Okay, let's move on to my second story. And I used the word shocking earlier, I'm going to use it again. The shocking clearance of Indian police over the murder of a farmer during the recent farmers' protests. Now, we reported on at the time, back in February, March, there was a young farmer, Khalsa Singh, during the protests. He was shot in the head, as we believe, by a single bullet, which killed him. And blame was laid at the time on the police. We know the police were armed during the protests. We've shown enough videos of evidence of that. And news just emerged over the weekend that Indian police have now been cleared. They have been absolved of the shooting of the Sikh man. And the reports are that the Forensic Science Laboratory has ruled that the 21-year-old, he was a young lad, this farmer, the victim, Khalsa Singh, was killed by a shotgun, which Haryana police claim absolves them of the death as they don't use shotguns. Now that's an interesting detail I'll come back to. The claim, of course, unsurprisingly, has provoked the anger of Sikh groups because after eyewitnesses saw the police firing in the crowds in February, shortly before Khalsa was killed from a bullet to the head. But the FSL report was part of an investigation into the killing, which Haryana police deny responsibility for, despite video evidence of police firing at the crowds, as I mentioned. So the report has led to police suggesting that the farmers' protests, wait for this, the farmer protesters, they were actually responsible for the death. So the police are now turning this around, saying that the protesters were actually responsible for the death of this young lad. Although none were actually seen in possession of any firearms, let alone firing them at the massive demonstration. This happened on the 21st of February at the Cousineau border area. Now, in the same week, an obvious publicity stunt saw Punjab authorities give Khalsa Singh's sister a job with the police, something which was promised, as well as more financial compensation to Khalsa Singh's family after his death. Now, again, let's have a look at that. So the Punjab authorities offered Khalsa's sister a job with the police and some more financial compensation to Khalsa's family. Now, you have to ask yourself, if you're the police, why would you be bribing the family with his sister a job and his family some money? Why would they be doing that if they felt no guilt? Clearly, at the time, the police knew that the finger of suspicion was on them, and they knew they had something to hide. So that, again, that in itself raises very many questions. And Sikh journalist Parmjit Singh Ghazi compared the findings to another Indian police killing of a Sikh youth in 2012. Protests against police inaction on Beadby, that's sacrilege, led to police shooting a 17-year-old Jaspal Singh dead. And this journalist, I'll just quickly read this because this is interesting evidence that correlates to what's happening here with Shubkaran. And he said, investigation into Shubkaran's killing, this recent one, appears to mirror the troubling patterns seen in Jaspal Singh Gurdwara's killing case. In 2012, Jaspal Singh was fatally shot by police with an AK-47. Now, despite initial denials of AK-47s being used on the day of the incident, a court-ordered forensic examination eventually linked the bullet to a police-issued AK-47, so it was the police at that one. The police later claimed the shot was fired in the air and ricocheted to fatally hit Jaspal. Years later, a closure report was filed asserting no trial was necessary, etc., etc. Now, in Shubkaran's case, forensic findings indicate he was fatally struck in the head by shotgun fire, and Haryana governments claim that Haryana police don't use shotguns. This is indicative of a prevailing implied policy of impunity in cases where police are accused of lethal use of force. So what this journalist has basically highlighted was, in that case, there is a precedent set here where an innocent Sikh is killed by a bullet, and then, of course, any subsequent inquiry says, oh, but the police weren't using that type of weapon. And then subsequently it is discovered actually the police were using that type of weapon at the time. So, yeah, this case does mirror the case. And I want to come back to that point where I said earlier that the Haryana police claim we don't use shotguns, so it can't have been us, because the forensic report said he was killed by a shotgun. Now, I've used shotguns and I've used rifles of all types and pistols indeed over my many years in the military and otherwise and in sport. I know the difference between a shotgun pellet and a firearm, a rifle or a pistol round. A shotgun sends hundreds of pellets in a vast sweep, in a vast range. If you're shot by a shotgun, there isn't just one entry wound, there are many entry wounds, and usually quite shallow, obviously the further away. And the shotgun range is probably 30 to 50 feet, 10 to 15 metres maximum effective range. A rifle, particular high velocity rifle, has a range of several miles, literally 2 or 3 miles, and it's a one projectile with a high kinetic energy. In other words, it's one projectile that if it hits your body will cause an inordinate amount of damage and it will likely kill you. And this gentleman, Shubkaran, he was killed by a single round. He was killed by one thing hitting his body. That's not a shotgun. So he was killed clearly by a rifle, a bullet, basically, not a shotgun cartridge. So to me, even just from a distant perspective, something doesn't add up here, and I think it is very likely that a police-issued weapon was behind this. Well, certainly he was not killed by a shotgun. He was killed by either a pistol or a rifle round. The question is who owned and who fired that, and it is very likely, again, that it was the police. And as that journalist has reported, the precedent has been set in the past where essentially the police have lied. We know the police lie in India, it happens all the time. And it is very likely that this whole thing, once again, is a police cover-up. And I think the backlash of this, James, will be significant. I think in time it will emerge that the police were behind this. And once again, it just points out to lethal force used illegally once again against innocent protesters, innocent democratic protesters, James.
Yeah, it's just disgusting, and we've talked about the protest situation with the India government trying to quash them in so many stories that we've touched on. And, there's so many questions here. Did Mr. Singh's sister actually apply for a job with the police force and they were trying to expedite it to get her in there as a part of their public image? Or did this offer just come out of the blue, which is really even more telling, I think, about, the situation. The fact that they're paying off the family for something they didn't do. I mean, there's a lot of questions here, and they say that there is video out there. By all means, if anybody out there is able to get their hands on some video and send it to us, we'd love to review it and analyze it. Again, it's not something that will show on the air, but we'd love to take a look at it and analyze it ourselves. If there's any footage that people are able to forward to us, by all means. But again, it just doesn't seem right to me, and I agree with you on your analysis in terms of the shotgun pellets and spray versus the precision of a single bullet. So,
yeah, the whole story just doesn't add up, and to me, it stinks of a very typical, a very classic state cover-up here. So, yeah, and there's no doubt, and we reported at the time of the farmers' protest the brutality that the police were using. I mean, we've shown pictures of some of the wounds, pellet wounds, salt pellet wounds, rubber bullet wounds, which are horrendous, people losing their sight, the breakages, I can't even say the phrase, bone breakages were horrendous. I mean, some of the injuries were shocking from those protests. The police were not holding back in the brute force that they were using. So, yeah, I think, the truth will come out on this, I have no doubt. Okay, let's move on to a good news story, because we always prefer to talk about good news stories. And we have, let me just find this story. Here we are. So, Khalsa Aid. James had a great story the other day about Saver, about Sikh organisations, charity organisations operating, doing their wonderful work the world over, particularly in the Caribbean at the time. And then, as one of our correspondents mentioned, I think they were in Turkey as well, operating. How about this one? Khalsa Aid. Khalsa Aid, based in London, a fabulous organisation. Ravi Singh Khalsa, who oversees that organisation. They are, as we said, all over the world. Wherever there's trouble, you'll find a Sikh organisation, a Sikh charitable organisation. Khalsa Aid, last month, broke a national record for food donations. So the Khalsa Aid have been working in collaboration with local schools, which saw £210,000 of food, that's pounds weight, of food donated to the Ottawa Food Bank. What an enormous amount of food, which will help feed the people of Ottawa in Canada. And this I'll just show out this press release here. Largest one-day food drive in our history. On June the 15th, this was last month, it was finally reported that the Ottawa Food Bank witnessed an extraordinary event, a record-breaking donation of £210,000 of food, thanks to the collaborative efforts of Khalsa Aid Canada and 6 schools within the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. This massive donation surpassed the previous one-day food donation record by 14%, highlighting the community's unwavering commitment to combating food insecurity in Ottawa. And I think highlighting the Sikh community's unwavering commitment to savour. I mean, well done to Khalsa Aid. Once again, it's fabulous to be able to report such great things that the community is doing around the world, and not just in terrible situations like the hurricane in the Caribbean, or whether it's earthquakes or terrible natural disasters, floods, etc. We see it even just in the Canadian communities, helping those in need, vulnerable people. We see it, and the one thing that struck me also, and I'll just go on a slight tangent here, is this whole concept of langar. I was once invited very, very graciously into a Gurdwara in Phoenix a few months ago, and I experienced langar. And langar is a wonderful basic concept set up by one of the original gurus, who said that we must always open up Gurdwaras to those vulnerable in society, where anybody, regardless of background, faith, anything, whatever their circumstance, whatever their situation, they will always find food and hospitality at a Gurdwara. And literally, homeless people can go into a Gurdwara and be guaranteed a meal. I mean, I actually can't think of many other religions who are so openly generous, who swing open their doors. I know most religions, generally speaking, are very charitable in their foundations, but just this basic concept of langar is a wonderful thing to see and personally experience. I saw it firsthand for myself, and it was a very warming thing to see. But James, here in Ottawa, even in a civilised country like Canada, a very civilised country like Canada, of course there are vulnerable. And here we see
Khalsa Aid. Far civilised, come on now.
Well, it has its moments. But here we see Khalsa Aid.
All across Canada are just phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal, the work they do.
Yeah, it's great to see. So well done, Khalsa Aid. And again, we'll be more than delighted to highlight the great works of these charitable organisations. Okay, let's move on to our comments. We've had lots and lots of comments. Thank you so much for all these. Loads of wonderful comments. Do keep them coming in, because we do love reading them. It gives us loads of really interesting information and loads of very interesting insights and perceptions from our audience's point of view, which is always very interesting and helpful for us to understand if we get something wrong indeed as well, or to help shape our interpretation of events and stories that we report. Excuse me. So last Friday we uploaded an interview with a former retired colonel from the US Army, a Sikh, who originally came from the Punjab and has written 2 books. He is an expert on Mahatma Gandhi, and it was a fascinating interview, certainly from my perspective, and hopefully clearly from our audience perspective. Colonel Singh brought up a lot of very interesting truths about Mahatma Gandhi, and many truths that I certainly wasn't aware of, and I can guarantee most people in the West have absolutely no idea about the truth of Mahatma Gandhi. And I do urge any of our audience who haven't seen this interview, and it's the first interview in a series of interviews that we will be looking at discussing Mahatma Gandhi, because of course this first interview covered the early part of his life leading up to about 1947 and partition, and of course Gandhi played a very significant part within partition, and not in a very good way either for the Sikh community, as a subsequent interview will reveal, because we'll look into that in more detail. But yes, of course, we had some great comments after this interview. Virtuoso Productions said Gandhi was a British asset who gave the British a face-saving exit and gave them enough time to create divisions, then caused a division which killed millions during partition. Yeah, and again, this will be something that we'll cover in a subsequent interview. We didn't go into this in detail during this particular interview, but absolutely spot on this comment. Gandhi was significantly embedded in those negotiations, and he basically, once again, he's one of these others who ensured that the Sikh community suffered terribly in partition. He's responsible for so much bloodshed, Gandhi. It's shocking, actually. As I say, do watch this interview if you don't understand why. M. Verdi, one of our regulars, says Gandhi's son exposed him in his book, but this book was banned in India and was then destroyed. Yeah, there's an awful lot that we know about Mahatma Gandhi, not least because he himself wrote about his racism. He hates black people. Gandhi hated black people. He was a raging racist. This is something that is never highlighted, particularly in the West. In the West, and again, this interview reveals all this. This whole image, this whole persona, this fake persona was created about Mahatma Gandhi, about this peace-loving, wonderful human being. He was far from it. He actually loved war. He was involved in 4 wars himself. He recruited for the First World War. He recruited Indians to join the British Army, to join the carnage in the trenches on the front lines of the First World War. And so this huge fake narrative has been created about Mahatma Gandhi. He is absolutely not what this narrative's made him out to be. And there's been a few comments here, and I'll just quickly go through these. Sam Singh says he was living with his white boyfriend in South Africa. He was also sleeping with young girls. And Vikaram Randhawa says Gandhi was gay. Yes, clearly. There were elements about his sexuality which were obviously very heavily buried. Now, in modern days, that's not such an issue. In those days, it was massive to be gay. It was illegal in most countries, and in many countries, you'd face the death penalty, as indeed you do in many countries in these days. But of course, all this was buried, and he was sleeping with young girls in India. This is known facts. There is documented evidence that this is what he was doing. He was sleep naked with very young girls at the time. So again, it flies in the face of this narrative. And then Cruella, at the end, one of our regulars says, "Thank you. Growing up, we were told he wasn't a good guy. So you were told the truth, clearly. His followers are still promoting hatred against white people by working for social media." So yeah, again, James, all these comments. I wanted to bring up all these comments just to highlight. In this interview, the truth was laid bare, the truth was revealed to people like me who watched the Richard Attenborough film, which again was entirely fake. The whole story, the whole narrative. Mahatma Gandhi was not a peace-loving individual. He was a manipulative, I won't go as far as to say evil, some people would describe him as evil, but he was a manipulative, ambitious person who manipulated communities, whole communities, for his own agenda. And as I say, he was a raging racist. He hated black people, and then in turn, he then hated the British. He hated white people, which is why he pushed for Indian independence. So James, never believe what you see in the movies.
Absolutely. And here in Canada, we're in the same situation as yourself, that we would, that's something that we would never have learned in history, I'll tell you that.
Absolutely.
We were always taught that Gandhi was peace, love, and, butterflies and unicorns.
Indeed, and there are so many, and you have to watch the interview, and do watch the follow-up interview as well, because we'll be looking at those. I mean, one massacre, I'll just bring one to mind, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre in 1919, which the British massacred 200 Sikhs. That, no defence for the British, it was terrible. But the whole situation was created by Gandhi. The whole situation was manipulated. He essentially sent all those people, the Sikhs who were massacred, he sent them into that situation knowing full well that they would be murdered by the British. Again, this Machiavellian character, very, very dangerous person. Do watch that podcast for those who want to know more about all that. Now, I want to go on to our next batch, which was after one of our other shows. Harjinder Kondal commented, I give full support to both of you. Thanks. Thank you very much. I came to the UK 60 years ago. It was a very difficult time. Now, this is after James's story, his video about the diaspora from the 60s and 70s who fled India and the whole subcontinent region, looking for a better life because they were struggling economically to survive in the area. So many of them came to the UK, to Canada, to the US, to Australia. And one of our correspondents was indeed one of those people. And it was, as he highlights, it was a very difficult time. Yeah, my heart goes out to you. Well done for for building your life in the diaspora. It was, what a challenge for any family to have to do that, to come to a strange land, to a strange culture, and build a life literally from nothing. So, a rather belated welcome, and thank you for doing that, and well done to you, and thank you for the comment. Jasleen, again, one of our regulars. Great talking point, Angus and James. Oh yeah, now then we come back to politics, James. Firstly, Labour is not what it once stood for, especially since Tony Blair's times. Well, don't get me started on Tony Blair. He wasn't, in my personal opinion, he belongs in prison, but that's another story. Secondly, I didn't have much hope of the just politics under a privileged and titled elitist leader like Sir Starmer, especially with Sikhs. Sir Keir Starmer, who lives in a posh part of North London. Does he represent the working class? In my opinion, not in the slightest. Does he actually represent the Sikh community? Not in the slightest, in my personal opinion. And I think our correspondent probably agrees with that. More reason to push for Khalistan. Absolutely, indeed. Absolutely it does. James, let me come back to you on that one. Politicians, we've talked about this a lot. Certainly our new government, a Labour government, and our new Prime Minister comes in with lots of promises, but in reality, does he represent the Sikh community? One of your political parties has a Sikh at the head. I think it's fair to assume he probably does represent the Sikh community, and certainly Justin Trudeau has spoken out for the Sikh community.
For the most part, yeah. But again, we've got other people that are looking to get elected in the election next year that may not have that same openness and respect for all people. That it's anybody's guess what we're going to end up with next year. So let's hope that we continue on a path of tolerance and openness here.
Yeah, and I think this point here, Labour is not what it once stood for. I would agree with that, and I think actually Tony Blair was the reason for that. Labour traditionally here in the UK, as is reflected in other countries on the left side, they're the socialists. They represent the working class. Their ethos, their philosophy is that the wealth should be distributed more evenly, which is a very laudable claim. Now, in my opinion, I think once Tony Blair took over, the Labour Party was very left-wing. It was very socialist. And many on the extreme ends, it was communist and Marxist. But certainly the Tony Blair era brought in where they moved it more to the central area. And Tony Blair moved the left-wing politics more to the central ground. And as a result of that, he knew he had to do that to try and win power. But in that process, he then ended up betraying a large portion of his supporter base, the working class. And I think that has happened ever since. And Starmer, I think, has brought that back. And I'm going too much into British politics here, but Corbyn, a very left-wing MP who was a leader, he was bringing it back to the working class, but he has since been driven out by the Starmer side. And then we come on to our final comment. Barry Singh mentioned, "Justice delayed is justice denied." A quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, I couldn't say it better than that, James. We were referring obviously to all the political prisoners languish in prison without trial. Jagtar Singh Johal, Amritpal Singh, amongst many others, James. And I think this quote sums it up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's never too late to go back and to make things right as best as you can. But again, getting it right the first time definitely saves a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, and a lot of trying to recover from the past. We know that in Canada from atrocities that have happened here, and also in the criminal justice system when things haven't gone right. So again, it's got to make it right and try to do it, but sometimes it just gets away.
Yeah, thank you for that quote, Barry Singh. That's a very apt quote. Okay, same show. Sam Singh said, "In our holy book, it's clearly said most people will bow down in front of money and fame." This, of course, refers to our ongoing discussions about billionaires and the distribution or the poor distribution of wealth among society. Very few people in this world have the guts to speak the truth. Mr. Scott, you are truly blessed because you never hesitate to speak the truth. Thank you very much in that. We do our best, don't we, James? We try to speak the truth.
We try.
Okay. Cruella mentioned this, James, for your video. Why are you guys showing India flags in the video you guys created? I'll let you answer this, James.
Yeah, so I believe that the video that you're referring to was the involvement of the Sikhs and Indians in Canada in terms of, if I'm not mistaken, that was the one about the military, or it might have been the one about the social giving and the community involvement. But regardless, what happens is that in the videos, I've made it clear that sometimes I use AI to help with gathering some of the footage. But it's also about, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, it was to demonstrate the power of people coming together from different nationalities. Now, when you come to a new country, whether you're Italian, you're Scottish, you're Irish like myself, you tend to bring a lot of your customs, your religion, your culture, and that with you. And that's a part of who you are and a part of what makes up a nation. So I don't think that because somebody's in Canada, they should do away with the patriotic flag, whether it's from India, whether it's from China or Japan. If they're proud of their ancestry and their background, I say that's great. If you're Canadian, you don't have to be solely Canadian. You can be Asian Canadian, you can be Italian Canadian, you can be whatever you want to be. But just remember that, it's all about coming together and acceptance of everybody in the community as one.
So I think the simple answer to that is AI. Unfortunately, we don't have full control over AI, and when we talk about India, it naturally just throws in an Indian flag from its stock footage. So that's probably why. If it appears inappropriate, that'll be why. Flags are emotive issues. We, as we said regularly, we're not enemies of India. We love India. We love the Indian people. We respect the Indian flag, but in the same breath, we also stand up for the Punjab and the rights of Punjab as we stand up for Khalistan, because we are clearly believers in the whole concept of Khalistan. So, yeah, take from that what you will. But, yeah, thank you for pointing that out, and I hope that clarifies it. Just on an administrative point here, thank you for this comment. C. Zumyon says, adding timestamps be great. Yeah, actually, this is a very good idea, and apologies that we haven't done so far. We are a very small team. We need to get our daily shows out as quickly as possible. We need to get them uploaded as quickly as possible. We are a small team, so we have to rush the edit and get it uploaded and get it out there as quickly as we can. It's just, so adding timestamps is just would be another process slowing up that whole chain. But I agree with you, actually. It is a good idea, because I know people, some stories will be of interest to some people, some stories won't be, and I know people want to skip to stories that they are particularly interested. If you see them on this video, you know that I had time and the editing team had time to do it. So yeah, if we can, we will. Thank you for that suggestion. And our final comment. Yeah, lovely comment. Thank you for this. We mentioned the Nihangs. these fabulous warriors of old from the Empire days, the Sikh Empire days, 19th century, these incredible gentlemen who fought for the Sikh armies, who were called Nihangs, and I showed up a fabulous photo of one at the time. And yeah, they're the most inspiring people. They were part of the Khalsa Panther, the army in the Sikh Empire. And this gentleman, Bhupinder Singh Randhawa, says, "I belong to a Nihang family. I have lived this life. This is the most pure way of life." Respect, sir. Thank you very much for that comment. I salute you. I take my hat off to you. What a fabulous heritage, and it's an honour, frankly, to have you as one of our viewers. So thank you for informing us of that. But there, that brings us to a close. We have run out of time, unfortunately, as always, but there we must draw things to a close. And it has been a great show that we've enjoyed bringing to you once again, but you have been watching Perspectives. Don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We do love receiving them. And as you know, we do love talking about the talking points that you bring up in those comments. But don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com on anything that you'd like to highlight for our attention and anything that you'd like us to cover. But that is it. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me, and it is goodbye from James.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe and have yourself a wonderful day. Thanks, Angus. Back to you in London.
You have been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.